You're listening to the Beauty Beyond Bella podcast, powered by Formula Wellness.
Thank you for joining another episode. We're so excited to have you here and watch with us. This wouldn't be available if it wasn't for you. And so, as you know, I'm Dr. Yvette Suarez, board certified, and I have a fellowship in anti-aging and functional medicine, which is where my heart lies. Don't forget to like and subscribe and DM me if you have any questions. Well, hello, Marta. We're so happy to have you. Today, we're going to discuss with Marta Paul about all of these amazing aesthetic things. She's now been in business almost 20 years in the aesthetic world and wellness. She's also one of my beautiful partners with Formula Wellness and regional director. So welcome. We're so excited to have you on.
I'm so excited to be here and really appreciate the invite, Yvette.
Look, it is such my pleasure. So we're going to just dive right into it. There is so much going on and there's so much commotion in this world right now. And so I'm going to hit you with some hard questions that are out there right now.
Okay, how?
So let's begin with duck lips. I think people are afraid of having fillers because they don't understand that lips can look natural with fillers. So talk to me a little bit about what's going on.
For sure. I think, overdone faces is one of the biggest stigmas in the aesthetic industry. And, something I hear quite frequently is my husband doesn't want me to do it because I'm going to look crazy. And I think that comes from, when you're at the checkout line at the grocery store and you see the tabloids and these celebrities or people look disfigured and overfilled. And that is what's shown to the world, not natural looking results. So people automatically associate fillers with these very unnatural, overfilled lip looks. And lips being probably the number one area that we treat is one that we see a lot of overfilling. So, it is something we see a lot of in our industry due to a lot of body dysmorphia and people always wanting more, right? We think more is better. And I think it's up to the practitioners to educate our patients that more is not better and natural results are okay, and showing them that we can create beauty without having this overdone look.
Yes. And I agree. And look, I think we need to also talk about the types of fillers. So if I have a patient, like you said, that may be a little bit older or says my husband cannot tell, or I don't really want larger lips, but they look deflated and wrinkly, or I have a lot of lip lines. And so, I look at it as I'm an Allergan girl, not a Galderma girl. And so I know everyone has a little bit different, but I like Volbella as my gateway drug, right? It's a very light, thin filler that just kind of hydrates the lips. And so it really depends on not only technique, but the product that we're using and how often we're injecting.
100%. 100%. I, having been in the industry almost 20 years, back in the day, didn't have very many tools in my toolbox. Not like it is now. I had, very few fillers to work with. And so I believe back then a lot of overfilling was being done because we didn't have this, array of different filler types to work with. And so now it really excites me to be like, wait, let's stop. Let's look at your anatomy. Let's look at, what results we can get. Do you have very tight tissue? Do you have more loose tissue? What can your lips even hold? And then we can go back to our toolbox and work with, incredible companies like Allergan or Galderma, and choose a product that's very specific for that patient and is not going to yield this very overdone look. So I love to, talk to my patients about that, saying, okay, what are we doing? Are we just wanting to hydrate? Do we want to hydrate with a little bit of plump? Do we want a lot of plump? What are we looking for? And let's sit down and talk about how we can get there over time.
So talking about so I started my practice 20 years ago, and back then I only had collagen. And that filler only lasted 3 months. And so when people come in and tell me now they don't last as long and they're lasting a year to year and a half, I think, whoa, we've come a really long way. So they're changing. So
for sure.
Another big topic is going to be and you kind of talked about it a little bit, is the pillow phase. Look, there is sometimes we see other people and about over injecting. It used to be back in the day that it was more of a monkey look. If everyone remembered, people would overfill the nasal labor folds and above the lip line for smoker lines. And so this was overfilled and this was threatened. And then we realized that we should really start with mid-face enhancement. Lifting from here would really help our jawline. And now we really know about the actual periphery, right? And making sure that the profile looks good all the way across. So talk to me about what is going on that people are looking more doughy like or really round like.
I think it's a combination of things. You know, back to patients believing that more product equals better results. Um, those older fillers that we used to have, and us not stopping to say, hey, let's go ahead and dissolve and start from the beginning. People have this notion in their head that, my filler only lasts 6 months or my filler only lasts a year, probably due to what you spoke to is, back in the day, yeah, they didn't last as long. And so people just get in this habit of layering and doing something every 6 months and feeling or shopping around and, getting their face touched at multiple different clinics without the other practitioner's knowledge. And so they're constantly getting something put in their face, which does many different things. As we age, it starts to shift. Our fat pads start to remove. We get bone reabsorption. And that filler, it's not aging as well. It's sitting on the lymphatic system. It's blocking that the lymphs from draining, and we start to get this overfilled face. And so I think it's a very tough conversation that has to be had with those type of patients and sit them down and say, okay, this has become your norm, because they really don't think they look bad, right? It's what they look at every single day. It's what their friends see all the time. And it's what they've come to know as norm. And it's our job to sit them down and say, okay, we need to have a tough conversation, and it's time to remove all this. Let's start fresh. We need to see what's underneath there. You've had years of old filler. It's actually aging you at this point. And let's do a little reversal, and let's start fresh with some of these newer fillers we have that integrate better into the tissues, that have, technology that moves with your face and moves when you animate, therefore looking a lot more natural. And I will say, it's never a fun conversation. The patients never want to hear it. But I've gotten to a point in my career where I now will say, unless we do this, I'm not touching your face for your own good. And I've never had anyone come back and be angry with me once we've done it. They're always like, wow, I had no idea I was looking like that. And so it's definitely something when I'm training new injectors that I get them comfortable with talking about to patients. And I think it's an important conversation to be able to have confidently.
Yeah, look, I agree. It takes a lot of skill and confidence to tell a patient no. Right? I think more newer and novice injectors are like, I'll just do whatever you tell me to do. But we do no harm. And in the aesthetic world, I tell people your face is a reflection of my work, right? And so you're my art, and I need to make sure that you are perfect, because when you walk around and someone says, who did your face? And you say my name, I want them to be like, that's amazing. And I am truly in that belief that less is more, and that if you can't see that I've done anything in your face and you look amazing, then I've done a good job. If you can see everything I've done, then I've done a bad job for sure. And so that's super important. What do you think about when also, I think part of that issue is going to be like, let's say we're overfilling one area and not correcting others. For example, we have those that are really, really high cheekbones, but then we have their temple fossa super sunken in, their jawline is super sunken in. And so it's just that they're disproportionate, right? And so really fixing all the different areas really kind of blend that look more natural.
Well, I think that just goes back to the consultation process and you as a provider being a well-rounded provider. And if someone comes in and is just focusing on lips, I want lips, and it's your job to sit them down and do a full face assessment and go through each area, which we do. We do upper thirds, mid, and lower thirds with them and say, look, this is what I see, and let me point it out to you. And most of the time they're like, oh my gosh, I've never even noticed that until you point it out, because they're hyper fixated on one certain area. I want these cheekbones. And so I'll show them, okay, if I just gave you these high cheekbones, this is what it's going to do. This is what it's going to do to the temple, or this is what it's going to do to the jawline. It's going to throw off the symmetry of your face. And so even though temple filler doesn't sound fun, right? You don't walk away and are like, wow, my face is, completely different. It's a very subtle change, but it's such a significant impact later on. And once you do it and they compare photos, they're like, well, I would have never thought to do that area, but what a difference it made in my face. So I think it goes back to, us as the providers, doing our due diligence and explaining to the patient, educating them why we need to focus on certain areas. And, I never want an unhappy patient. So I always say, if you're focusing on cheeks and cheeks is what you want, I'll give you a little pop of cheek, but I won't do it until we focus on 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll give you that little cheek pop you want. But it's our duty to steer them in the right direction.
And for those who don't know, let me just walk them back a little bit. What we're talking about in the temporal fossa is this little area right here that as we age, we lose fat and it becomes depressed in. And so people have heard it as peanut-shaped heads, scoop heads. There's terrible names for it. And so what ends up happening is when this is projected high and this is sunken in, it actually starts to drop your lid a little bit. And so one of the nice side effects is when I actually inject their temples, their brow looks like they have a nice little lift because that little area that was so sunken in is now filled up and everything else starts to look good. And all of us do this. And I used to kind of giggle when my patients do that. And now I do it too. We all come in and we go, I just need this. See this? Look how much better I look when I do this. We all do that, right? And that is coming from the periphery. That is coming from the temples, from the lateral cheeks, from the mandible. And I think we only see this, and it's really important to focus on that.
Well, and I think our more mature patient base is used to what we did 18, 20 years ago, which I'm guilty of as well. When patients came in, we weren't educated. It was a very new industry. We're like, oh, you have a fold? I'm going to fill that fold. Oh, you want cheeks? I'm going to fill that cheek. And we didn't assess the face as a whole simply because there wasn't a lot of education about doing that in this field. And as we've progressed, I think, it's now the norm to assess the face as a whole and say, okay, and now I know what is causing this deep fold. It is mid-face volume loss. And now I know what's causing this exaggerated cheekbone or, where you can see the temporal bone and it's your, the temples being depleted. So we now know the whys. And so it's easier to diagnose and assess the face and treat it as a whole.
So tell me, you for a while, prior to joining us with Formula Wellness, did a lot of education. And so you helped other providers start up their own practices and teach them how to inject. Walk me through what that looks like.
Yeah, so I still do ongoing trainings. I've also assisted over 20 physicians set up practices all over the U.S. And I have a pretty rigorous style of teaching, only because it's truly an art, right? And not everybody, you have to have an eye for it. And so I've told a lot of people, this just isn't for you. If it's not something, if you can't see beyond just filling a certain area and you can't assess a face and appreciate slight asymmetries, maybe it's not the industry for you. So I start with that. I start with, let's look at faces. You tell me what stands out to you most, and then I'm going to walk you through what we would do and what type of treatment plan would we create for this patient before I even start teaching them injectables, right? We have to make sure that they have that artistic side to them before we start treating or training them in the manual side of things, right? And so my approach is always that first. Let me figure out where your artistic eye is and let's build on that and let's hone in on that skill. And then I can teach you the actual physical part of the injectables. So I typically do a mentorship that is several months long. A weekend course to me is not enough to be an amazing injector. And, when I started, I didn't have a lot of mentorships. It wasn't an industry that was really discussed. There wasn't YouTube school and Instagram school and all these trainings that you can go to. And so the way I teach is kind of how through all the trials and errors that I had throughout the years and just, letting people know that mistakes are going to be made and just go back to your fundamentals and just revert back to what your eye sees and what you need to do to make a face look naturally beautiful.
It's interesting. I think, I've trained from many organizations and trained lots of individuals that are doing these weekend courses. And it's always a little scary, right? And I agree. It's kind of hard to know in the beginning who's going to have that artistic eye. Because I always say it's very easy for me to give you a template of here is best practices, right? And so this is where you want to start your injection techniques. And so it could be like, here's you're going to inject A, B, and C. And then when they ask me, well, do you do that? And I'm like, not really, because my injection technique changes on every person I see, and that confuses them. So I try to give them a cookie cutter approach, right? Because that's how you have to do when you start. But then as you become more comfortable, you can really change that up and really make that passionate for your patient and bring in that artistry to make them look great. But sometimes it's really hard to know in the beginning if they're going to have that or not.
It is. It's hard. And you have to kind of convince them like, hey, and in medicine, we're taught very black and white, right? It's if this is the symptom, this is the diagnosis, this is the treatment. And aesthetics is very much the gray area of medicine, right? It's you have to think outside of the box and not, there's not one specific way to treat, or there's multiple different ways to treat one specific issue. And teaching that is hard, to your point. And I get the same question. Well, why do you do it that way? You just told me to do it this way. And it's like, well, we'll get to that later. But for now, let's just learn the fundamentals. But, I even teach a course just on the consultation process. And it's like, all right, let's sit down and we go through several days of just how we assess faces. And what would you do here differently than what would you do over here? And I think practicing that regularly helps to hone in on that artistic capability that you need to be a great injector.
So excited to have you here watching and joining our podcast. It really means the world to me. And I really want to thank you and also thank our sponsors, Formula Wellness. As you know, I am Dr. Yvette Suarez. I'm a board certified physician and I have a fellowship in anti-aging and functional medicine. So please like and subscribe and DM me if you have any questions. The consult, I think, is the hardest part. I think that's where providers struggle, is really looking from top to bottom. And I include everything. I include my neck, my chest, my hands. Like, I tell them, do this full evaluation on your patient and come up with a game plan, right? So my strategy is always not to overwhelm my patients. And so I have what can we fix now? What can we improve in 30 days, 60 days, 1 year? And where do you want to end, right? We're going to start here. We're going to end here. And I don't like throwing it all out in one time. Like, I really do like this long process. It's taken us this long to look like this. And I think little by little, I'm going to get you to a much healthier place.
100%. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. People see these befores and afters and think, oh, I'm going to go in one visit and I'm going to look 10 years younger overnight. And that's just, it's not the reality of it, right? And so for me, I always tell everyone what I do as an injector is, I'm your fairy godmother, cherry on top, bippity boppity boo. But we really have to address the aging process from the inside out, and a complete 360 approach to what else are you doing. You come and see me every few months for some quick instant gratification injections, but what are you doing at home on a regular basis? What does your lifestyle look like? Are you wearing sunscreen? What is your skincare routine? And when you start talking about that, they're like, wait, I just want injections. And I'm like, okay, we can do that, but I'm truly not changing anything at a cellular level, right? It's not true anti-aging. It's our quick fix, which we live in the 21st century. We all love these instant gratification things, but in the long run, it's not going to truly be anti-aging unless we are changing things at the cellular level, which requires skincare and skin treatments and lasers and cell turnover and collagen stimulation. And so I think that's probably for me one of the hardest things, is to convince people you can't just do it with injectables, right? We need to look at, what are we putting into our bodies? What are we using on a daily basis? I always use the gym analysis, and it's or analogy rather, sorry, is if you go to the gym once a week or you go to the gym 6 days a week, when are you going to see more results? And so you coming to see me every few months for a quick Botox treatment, sure, it's great, but if you're using good medical grade skincare every single day, if you're coming in for, lasers and microneedlings and things that are going to stimulate collagen on a regular basis, so you're doing things more frequently, then you're really going to see the result, not only faster, but better, right? It's going to look a lot more natural because your skin integrity has changed. And I'm not just trying to give you a quick fix.
Yeah, no, it's definitely multifaceted. Look, people come in all the time after we volumize their face. They're like, well, what about these smoker lines? What about these little tiny fine lines? And I'm like, that's texture work, right? That is not an injectable work in general. It's going to be your lasers. It's going to be your plasma devices. it's going to be your skincare product. Like I love my skincare, right? I am religious with it every single day. And I really do believe it has helped me long term maintain my results. And I even noticed the more devices I do, the longer my toxin fillers last.
For sure.
So it really goes hand in hand. They think, oh no, it's going to burn it off. I'm like, absolutely not. Like my Botox will last longer because your skin is tighter. You're building collagen. And so that laxity, when that Botox runs out, your face is not falling so quickly anymore. And I think they have to understand it really needs to be multifaceted.
And then it just enhances what we do, right? As injectors, it's only going to make your injectables look that much better. And if you have these big full lips and big cheekbones, but your skin texture is terrible, that's what people are looking at. They're not looking at your beautiful shaped lips and your beautiful cheekbone. They're like, wow, that your skin is the first thing you look at. And I think it's a hard one sometimes for people to grasp. But I am a firm believer of, using good skincare on a regular basis, not drugstore skincare, good medical grade skincare, and investing in regular treatments.
And we always focus on the face, and I for years have talked about the neck, right? I want my neck to match my face. There's nothing more discouraging than when your face looks good and your neck is fully sagging or you do not have a good jawline. And I think, Botox has done a good job right now talking about platysmal bands and Nefertiti lift. And so now I have all these people coming in and going, I didn't know neck could be treated. I'm like, girl, I've been telling you about your neck
For years here, yeah.
but you heard what is really waiting right now to have that conversation. I think them seeing the results really walks through that. And unfortunately, social media leads the trends. But I think patients need to listen to their providers. I think you agree with me that you want to make sure you choose a provider that's well educated and has an artistic eye. Then let me go to Groupon and get an $8 Botox and I'm going to look amazing. Can you talk a little bit about that and helping that trend not be so significant?
For sure. I think especially with the social media, and I got into this industry before social media was even a thing. And since social media, people kind of will also contribute, they'll see someone with a ton of followers, and oh well, then that means they're a great injector, or someone who is a KOL, and oh, that means they're an amazing injector. But if you go on their page, there's like no befores and afters, no work. They have gotten to where they've gotten in the industry because of popularity. Doesn't mean you're an amazing injector. So I always tell patients, look, does your injector do continued education? Are they constantly learning? As someone who's been in the field a long time, I change my technique almost yearly, right? And it's hard for me. I've been doing it a certain way for a long time, but I have to be open to change and changing my ways to get the best possible outcomes. And this industry is one that is forever changing. I mean, every year, as you know, we are told to do things differently. We have a new modality, we have a new tool, we have a new filler. And so we constantly have to stay on the forefront of that and learn new things and be open to changing how we've done things for the best possible outcome. And so these, Groupon deals and this cheaper is better. Look, this is a really fun and exciting industry to be in. And so everybody wants to be in it, right? It's how fun to be in a field of medicine where people want to come see you, which is not the norm in the medical field, right? They're excited to be in your chair. They're excited for their treatment plan. And so that's very desirable to many people to get into this field. And so they'll get into it without the background, without the knowledge, without the experience, and they'll offer these treatments at a very discounted price. And that's appealing, right? Because it then makes it obtainable to everybody. But as you and I both know, we end up fixing those patients down the line. And so cheaper is not always better. Everyone has a friend, cousin, uncle, that's in this industry now, and they're always like, oh no, can you fix what my cousin just did to me or my sister-in-law? And it's important to look at your provider's background, their education, how long they've been doing it, and ask those questions. It might be uncomfortable, but I would say, how often do you do continuing education courses? Are you a trainer? That's also very important because trainers have to stay on top of these aesthetic trends, and just vetting your provider to make sure you get the best possible results, and and you might have to pay a little bit more, but in the long run, it's going to save you a lot of hassle. We've seen it all over the years, and it's sad how much happens to patients because they chase, the Groupon specials.
Yeah, no, and it is hard, I think after injecting so long, I do love to try everybody's techniques. Now, I would probably only keep about 20% of them, but I'll try anything. If you have a new technique and you think it's going to work better than my technique, I will try it. I will practice with it for a while, and then you will still kind of cater it to what works best for you. And I agree with you. Like, this is an industry, and I think, especially at Formula Wellness, most of us are all trainers, right? They are the best of the best in the industry, and what I love is to have amazing women like you and Dr. Shelley and all of us to kind of bounce off ideas, and you're continue to grow and lead this industry into the right world, right? We need to make sure that we are always doing what's best for our patient, that they feel empowered when they leave, that they understand the process is not a one and done, which a lot of people think it is. And I love that. And I'll tell you this quick scenario, which I thought was really interesting. I love when patients come in and let's say they're just getting tox and they don't want a filler. And they say to me, no, I'm just waiting to have a facelift. I don't need fillers. And I said, okay. I said, well, you realize that a facelift is only to reposition the skin back up. If you have no volume, you still need fillers after a facelift. And they get, what? I just thought I could just do this once and never do anything again. And I think we could talk to that. We still need Botox. You still need fillers. The aging process continues every day. And so it is something that we need to continuously do.
For sure. And it's, I always ask myself, when when am I not going to care anymore? And I think, you know what, Marta, that's never going to happen. And it's a lifelong commitment, right? But if you pour your energy into it early on, you're going to age so much better. And so it to your point, it is something that is continuous. But if you start early on, you won't have to do as much in the long run. And it'll become, a less frequent visits because you have done things to help your skin age well and the integrity of the skin age better. To your point about plastic surgery, we're treating all the superficial layers of the skin, and you can pull back very unhealthy skin and it'll look tighter, but it's still gonna have textural issues. It's still gonna have pigment issues. We're still gonna have very superficial things going on, and so all of that still has to be treated or prevented early on, so that later when you do get a facelift, it can look fabulous because you've done years of work prior to give yourself the healthiest skin possible, which is something that I love biostimulators for, to help that collagen constantly be growing under the skin. So when you do end up having surgery, you still have that volumization there, and it's your own fat. It's not, you're not relying on fillers for that. Yeah, I get a lot of patients that get eye surgery done. So they get a blepharoplasty. And they'll come in and they're like, my under eye is so sunken in now. I'm like, well, yeah, you just removed that fat pad. And so underneath, although it was a bulging fat pad that needed to be removed, once it's removed, that's a hollow area. And so they're like, I thought I would get it done and never have to do fillers again. And so educating them that, no, we still have to do some things in these areas when we lose fat.
I agree. I think aesthetic is maintenance. And talking about maintenance, so I know you do wellness, and I know you do some weight loss with GLP-1s. When these patients are going through this rapid weight loss, so my goal is really kind of have them do little biostimulators or little HAs as they're going through the process. But a lot of people are fighting me and saying, I just want to wait till all my weight is gone and my face is fully fallen to come in and get a filler. Can you talk to that?
We don't want to wait until we see something to try and address it. So just treating early on, and creating that healthy skin so that actually as you're losing weight, it's not going to be as drastic of a change in the face because you're staying ahead of it rather than waiting until it's there and you have to have this drastic transformation and use a ton of fillers or a ton of biostimulators. So prevention is always better than waiting till it's very apparent that you're needing some type of intervention.
And I think what they don't realize is they'll actually use less product by starting earlier than waiting for it to all be gone and having to fill up an empty balloon, right? So if we can keep that balloon relatively full and not let it all deflate, it's going to be so much easier on the patient. And they always maintain and look great throughout their whole entire process.
And it's going to look more natural in the long run, right? We're not going to have to do as much, and it'll be a much slower process for them. And preventing always looks better than correcting.
There you go. So you heard it here. Marta told you prevention is not only important in wellness, but it's so important in aesthetics, right? Preventing all of that sagging, all of those changes, staying healthy, taking your vitamins, doing your skin care, doing multiple devices, all important. Any other advice that you would give us before we come to our last question?
We are both in a company that is very big on wellness. And so I always like to remind patients that these two things should not operate in silos. And, we need to focus on not only what we can improve externally, but what can we improve internally, and looking at, what are our diets? What is our lifestyle? What supplements are we taking? Are we addressing hormones? Hormones affect your skin as well. So it's important that we don't just focus on these external factors, but that we look inside and we prevent aging from within is so incredibly important. And I love that our industry is now recognizing that and talking about it a lot more. It's very exciting because I know it's something you and I both have preached for many years and have always believed in. And so I love that patients are coming in now and asking about wellness. And it's, one of those first questions where before we had to bring up the conversation and educate our patients. And so it's really exciting for me to be a part of, these advancements in our industry, and that patients are being more open to anti-aging from within. It's very, very exciting times.
Amazing. Look, I think that for those audience members that don't know, the FDA finally removed the black box warning on estrogen and progesterone for the last 20 years and have said they made the biggest mistake in history for women's health, that women require hormones, and that not only are we talking about that it decreases wrinkles and decreases cellulite, but we're talking about decreasing heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, like so many amazing things that we are now finally not going to get backlash for treating our patients for decades with bioidentical hormones and getting backlash from our colleagues and from the media. So this is going to be, I think, an unprecedented year in bringing back bioidentical hormones to all of our patients without that stigma.
Yeah. It's very exciting. And I know you've been through something that so many women fear, and you've come out of it even more passionate about wellness. You're a breast cancer survivor. I just want to ask you, how has that experience kind of shaped the way you approach wellness and hormones therapies in your practice? And how, I'm sure for you even more, that this black box warning is being removed. What does it mean for you in your care with your patients?
Yeah, look, I'm so exciting, and I really I think God puts us through something for a purpose, and I don't really know what that purpose was, but I feel like that is my ability now to talk to my patients. I think when I can show them that I'm on testosterone as a breast cancer survivor, and that there are so many good studies on how it treats breast cancer. There's so many great studies on hormone actually diminishes your risk of breast cancer. If anything, I'm actually, more against birth control. I mean, that's that's equine. I don't think people realize that is horse urine estrogen that we're putting in our body that is not compatible to our body. So that was really my only risk. Other than that, I didn't have any, really a lot of risk. I have some family history, but my genes were normal. And so I look at, at people. But the first thing my doctor asked me was, "Oh, I know you took hormones. That was why." And at that time, I was only on testosterone because I wasn't in menopause fully yet, and my estrogen levels were great. And so I was really disheartened that oncologists and surgeons take that. And I have fought for the last 4 years with my oncologist on the safety of hormones and giving them the research on it, and having this collaboration, a difficult collaboration. I mean, most of the time it was me butting heads with them saying, we're not treating patients correctly. And if you look at the statistics, we went from 1 in 8 women to almost 1 in 7 women are diagnosed with breast cancer every year. For what? We have not diminished the risk of breast cancer in any fashion, and we have had no hormones for 20 years out there in the market. So we're not doing a good service for them, right? We need to take this conversation back and really look at treating women holistically and making sure that we're doing the right thing for them, and that we're going to continue to prevent all disease hazards and not use this fear of this word of cancer that we've not improved at all anyway, and not let that stop us from making patients feel better.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm a little passionate about that.
Just a little. I can tell.
Can you tell? So before we end, I'd love to ask you, what does beauty mean to you?
So, in aesthetics, we talk about symmetry and proportions and all these external beauties. And to me, beauty is all around us. It's in things, it's in moments that make you pause, a face or a feeling, a smell, art, a gesture, something that makes you stop and smile and breathe or reflect. So to me, beauty is in all the little details that we rush past every day.
I love that. And I think we need to take that moment to appreciate that. And I always tell people appreciation and gratitude goes such a long way. And I think we would be so much happier if we just took a moment to appreciate all the wonderful people around us, all the wonderful things we see every day. And I thank you so much for coming on board and giving us all your wisdom, and hopefully helping lots of other practitioners out there.
Well, with that being said, I appreciate you, Yvette, and thank you for having me on. And it was delightful speaking with you today.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
You too, sweetie.
Bye.